Welcome to Inside Islam Today. I'm Imam Plemon El-Amin, and we have a special treat for you today. We're going to take you inside Masjid Farooq on 14th Street here in Atlanta. A wonderful addition to the beautiful skyline of Atlanta. This marvelous structure stimulates the soul and the aspirations of those who come here to pray 5 times a day. Welcome to Masjid Al-Farooq.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Dr. Siddiq.
Welcome to Al-Farooq.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, good to see you. Come on inside. Let's go in. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Khalid Siddiq, and I'm the Director of Public Relations and Outreach Programs at Al-Farooq Masjid. I've been involved with the masjid since its inception in 1980, and I volunteered here initially as the director, and now in the present capacity of welcoming visitors to the masjid and explaining to them about what we are all about Islam, about the masjid, and about the Muslim community. In 1980, the Muslim community in Atlanta was very, very small. There were just a few people here. In fact, I remember the first Friday prayer that was there, we had only about 35 to 40, 50 people there. Atlanta was a small city. Claremont Road was considered to be too far out at that point. So this place was a central place. The community was small, but there was a need for the Muslims to have a congregational place, a place where they could come together for congregational prayers, to have education for their children. And in doing so, the elders in our community, the people who were here for a long period of time, they started to have the concept or idea of building a mosque. And with time, as the community grew, the resources became a little bit more available, and the masjid was able to acquire the adjacent pieces of properties, and the concept of building a mosque which will be sufficient for the needs of the Muslim community as well as for the coming generations as well. Initially, we had a small piece of land. We were thinking of putting a relatively small building there, which would be sufficient. But at that very time, the area started growing, and Atlantic Station came into being, and high-rise buildings evolved. The property values went up. So we thought that we should build something here which will last generations and be a credit and a source of interest and architectural beauty for the city of Atlanta. As you well know, the size of this building, or the land, is in the form of a small square. And Islamically, buildings should face Mecca. So if you were to place a square building in this block, you would be putting like a rectangle inside a rectangle at oblique angles, and it would be very odd. So we actually hired some consultants, and we came up with this idea that inside the prayer hall should be an octagonal thing, but the outside walls of the buildings should be in conformity with the contours of the lot itself. So the square lot was then utilized and put a building which fulfilled the requirements of facing the Qibla. That's how this evolved. But as we started to grow and as the area assumed more importance, we brought more stone and more dome and a little architecture and a little minaret into our plans, and that's how the building evolved gradually. We were fortunate to have some of our community members give us some financial support as well, along with the support of the general Muslim community, and this masjid was completed actually purely by the support of the Muslim community in Atlanta and the surrounding areas. A masjid, as you know, is a place of worship, and the purpose is to accommodate the community in a central mosque. The whole building is about 45,000 square feet, considering all the floors, including all the floors there. It can accommodate in the main prayer hall over 1,000 to 1,200 people. The main floor of the building is obviously, which is called the musalla, or the main prayer hall, the equivalent of what a sanctuary would be in a church, is the one which holds the most people, where the imam stands and gives the khutbah, and where the main congregation is. The concept of a masjid in Islam is the dedication of a space for prayers and worship. And if the 5-time daily prayers are performed and the azan is called, technically that place becomes a masjid. Now that masjid is then governed by certain rules and regulations, which would be that, it cannot be sold, it cannot be converted into something else, it can be used for prayers, no worldly matters are discussed in there, you don't sit and gossip and play cards or things like that. So technically the land is what is sacred, but over the centuries, certain architectural features have evolved in the building of the masajid all over the world, which identify a masjid. Two of these are extremely important from the outside, or have become more the hallmark of a masjid. One is the dome, and the other is the minaret. The dome, as you might see inside here, is a dome from the inside, and you can see it from the outside as well. It serves the purpose of giving some echogenicity to the voice of a person. So therefore, places in which there is no electricity or there is no speaker system, the imam's voice can very easily be amplified through the dome. Also in certain other places where the temperatures are really hot, then the little spaces under the dome, there are little openings where we have our windows upstairs. Those will then allow the ventilation of the air, convection currents, and the masajid usually become a very cool place, even in hot summers. So that's the purpose of the dome. The minaret is something on which the imam, or the muazzin, which is the person who calls the call to prayer, would climb upstairs and call the call to prayers. Nowadays, of course, that there are loudspeakers in Muslim countries, but the purpose of the minaret has been to broadcast the call to prayer to a larger, wider community that can hear it and then recognize that it is time for prayer, and they can come into the masjid for prayers. In Muslim countries, you will see loudspeakers on the minarets, and the whole city will echo with the call to prayer from 5 times a day. In this masjid, the dome, as you can see, has been painted on the inside, and this was done actually by a local company, design company, and there were about 6 or 7 people of different backgrounds. None of them were Muslim, by the way, and they hand-painted it on the inside. We, of course, our construction committee, along with our architect and all the other people in our construction committee and the building, they all came up with the designs that have been put there. But we are really very pleased with the work that was done on the inside. Now, in Islam, there are no pictures or sculpture. Therefore, the art of calligraphy as well as geometric designs excels as an art form. So Islamic architecture is usually very rich in geometric designs, in calligraphy, and sometimes in floral designs also. So therefore, you will see in the masjid also that there is a certain degree of geometry there. There is a certain degree of symmetry there. And that symmetry is reflected probably very well in this masjid compared to most of the masajid in the country, actually, and reflects the true architectural spirit of a masjid which is found all over the world. As you might have noted when you enter the masjid, the most striking thing that you see in the prayer hall is that there are no chairs, there are no pews. There's no place to, like a sofa or a chair or to sit on. So we sit on the floor, and if you would see the floor here, it is carpeted, and the carpet has a little marking in there. That is not a space for one individual person, but it is just identifying a design in the carpet. When we stand for prayers, we have certain things in mind. Number one, in the masjid, there is no reserved space for anyone. We all sit on the floor. So there's a complete equality and humility. No person is sitting higher than the other, and no person is sitting in front of the other. In fact, whoever comes first tries to go back. And when we stand for prayer, we close all the gaps, stand shoulder to shoulder, heel to heel, so that even though we may be scattered here and there during the talk, during the khutbah, when the actual prayer starts, we all move forwards and make those straight lines, so that even a beggar can be standing next to a king, so everybody stands in equality in front of God. So there are no reserved places. The lines that you see here, these are just designs. What they signify is, it is important to stand in a straight line when we pray. And this would be just a little marker for people to put their feet so that they can stand shoulder to shoulder and make the line very straight. Now, this is a very intimate service. It's a service in which we touch each other. When we bend forward, when we prostrate, the back of a person is in front of the other person. So in order to keep the modesty and the respect of men and women separate from each other, privacy separate, the men and women are separated during the prayer service. We also noted that all these lines point toward in a certain direction. And that direction is the direction of Kaaba, which is in Mecca. So every mosque in the world, every masjid in the world will face in the direction of Kaaba. And if you are in Mecca, then you will be in a circle around, so that everyone is facing towards the Kaaba. And the big mosque, which can now accommodate about 1.5 million people, you will see that the whole place is as if they are concentric circles around, and as if the whole world is in a concentric circle facing towards the Kaaba. And this mihrab, which is in front there, this signifies the place, the direction of the Kaaba, and also is the place where the imam, the one who leads the prayer, the equivalent of what a pastor would be in a church, will be standing and delivering his khutbah. However, one thing is important. When the imam prays, he also turns and faces towards the Kaaba, so that the imam is actually leading the prayers, and the people are not praying to the imam, but he's also praying to God and leading prayers, the worshippers, in that direction towards Kaaba. The masjid is a community place. There are no members in the masjid. There's no membership. So a Muslim belongs to every masjid in the world. The prayers are in Arabic. So you can be a Muslim in America, travel in China, and you can enter any mosque and pray, and you know exactly what to do, because the prayer is the same, the language is the same, the timing is the same, the content is the same, and the direction is the same. So you would be at home in any masjid in the world. In order to enter into the sanctified space, the special place where the masjid is, the cleanliness of that masjid that place has to be kept. Also, we realize that there's a community place. So people have to come in, and at the time of Jummah, at the time of the congregational prayer, people come in throngs, they come in larger numbers. So there has to be some kind of a collecting space, which is there. So when we entered the masjid, you might have seen a little courtyard outside. The courtyard is a place where we enter into the premises of the masjid place, not inside the masjid itself. It gives us a little space to intermingle outside with the community. And more importantly, after the prayers are finished, people gather together, they meet their friends, and they develop a community spirit and evolve. And so there's the development of the community. You might also have noted that there were 2 fountains there. Now, fountains are not necessary. By the way, all these things are not necessary in a masjid. The only thing is the land and the direction and the intention. However, the essence of worship in Islam is the peace, the quiet, the tranquility, the concentration, and the humility that a person has. And as you might know, those who have studied psychology and the workings of the body, the sound of the water falling drip, drip or a little fountain running or a stream running is a very soothing sound. And it adds a little bit of a nature to the courtyard. So when you have the little fountain running and people standing there in a courtyard, it gives them an uplifting spirit. It gives them the ability to appreciate nature, appreciate God in its various forms. There is also a place there in which can be used to clean oneself, which is perform wudu. So there are some taps there as well. We usually don't use that in Atlanta, although in most other countries in the world, that is used for ablution. We may also have noted that when we entered the masjid, we had to take our shoes off. And now there's a link between taking the shoes off and sitting on the floor. Since we sit on the floor, we don't want the street dirt or filth to be carried with the shoes into the masjid, so that people will then walk in and the people would be sitting on an unclean place. In Islam, as I mentioned earlier, that the prayers that are offered in the masjid is a form of spiritual cleanliness. We cleanse ourselves, we remember God, we prostrate, we humble ourselves before God, and it is a form of spiritual cleaning. We ask His forgiveness, we glorify God in the prayer. And as we ask His forgiveness, it's only fair that when we stand in front of God, that we be physically clean. Physically clean can mean different things. In Islam, the prayers can be offered only when a person has cleaned themselves in a special way, glorifying the name of God and doing certain things, which is very simple: washing hands 3 times, rinsing the mouth, rinsing the nose, washing the face, washing the arms to the elbows and the feet to the ankles. Now, this is called wudu or ablution. Every masjid in the world will have a place where ablution is performed. It may be in the form of a pond outside. It may be in the form of a running fountain. It may be in the form of a tap outside. It may be in the form of a tank from which there are little spouts from which water continues to flow. But here we have a wudu area. We have kind of custom designed so that many of us, when they come in large numbers, in fact, we can seat about 38 people there. When people come in, they can perform the wudu without waiting too long in lines. And this wudu area is present in every masjid in the world. And as I mentioned, it may take different shapes or forms. We live in America, and America is a society in which there are many different religions, and the strength of America lies in all those people knowing each other, welcoming each other, and in fact living with each other with respect and dignity. When we were planning the masjid, we knew we have an octagon which is which has the dome on top, and there was a space left on the other part of the building which we wanted to convert into a information center and a library, and where we now host groups of visitors, Muslim and non-Muslim. We hold classes for our educational programs also, and that is, we call it the information center or the library. Since a large number of Muslims, non-Muslims come into the library also, we tried to kind of dedicate, conceptually we thought, well, let's put another dome there, which would be another area signifying that there is space in the masjid for other people of other faiths to come and be welcomed and be a part of our programs and part of the effort that we have of knowing each other in a positive manner with mutual respect. So the second dome, actually, usually mosques either have 3 domes or 1 dome, but we have 2. One represents the bigger dome, which is above the congregational space, the prayer masjid, and the smaller one is about the dome, just signifying that we have room for our other community members and society at large to be welcomed into the masjid.
We're in the Atlanta Masjid of Al-Islam Plaza, and one of the most outstanding businesses is the Radiant Medical Health Family Center. We're going in to talk with the lead physician, really the founder, Dr. Khadija Askari. So join us as we go inside Islam today.
My name is Dr. Khadija Ascari. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was one of 10 children. I'm the knee baby, so I'm just close to the bottom of the totem pole. My mother was a licensed practical nurse, and my father was a welder. He worked in a shipyard in Philadelphia. So she really was my inspiration behind getting interested in medicine. One of the things about my mom is that she was a devout Christian. She loved people. Even though I had 9 brothers and sisters, we always had around 20 kids in the house. You know, our house was the house to go to if you needed something fixed or if you just needed a hug. After med school, you know, you have to do a residency. I did a residency and I did a chief resident spot as well, which is kind of like, you know, just taking the time to sort of specialize more in the care of children. So my internship was in pediatrics, and my chief residency with Grady Affiliated Hospitals was also in pediatrics. And so when I went to school, of course, you know, medical school is quite expensive. They had a program called the National Health Service Corps. So it was kind of like the Peace Corps for the United States. So in accepting financial assistance from them, then I fulfilled an obligation to work in a community health center when I first got out of med school. And so that community health center actually was right here in this community. It was right off of Gresham Road. It was with Southside Healthcare. And so community health centers at that time were sort of centers where, you know, the community had partnered to have health services right in their community. And they were supposed to have some kind of say as to what those services were. There was a sliding fee scale so that people really had access to health care and nobody was turned around. So it really was a great place to work because we could see people and not have to worry about could they afford it, did they have insurance, and provide them with the highest quality of care that we had to offer. So I came out and I was in the National Health Service Corps before I went into private practice. It was from the Institute of Positive Education. So the guy who's credited for founding Kwanzaa was one of the people who was a founding member of that group. Is based in Chicago. So the book basically just talked about the need for us to have institutions in our communities, that we had to have banks, that we had to have medical centers, that we had to have our own schools. So that was always something that sort of stuck in my mind, that I wanted to be part of that brick lane. You know, if we're to be a people of power, we have to lay so many bricks that nobody can knock us down. And those bricks have to be comprehensive. It has to be education. It has to be healthcare. It has to be spirituality. It has to be economic. It has to be all those things. So I definitely wanted to do my part in getting that done. And so I decided to go into private practice. So the first time I went to private practice, however, I went where I thought there was the most need, and that was down in Monroe, Georgia. Okay. So I stayed in Monroe, Georgia for about 6 years, and I would have people leaving Atlanta, coming down to Monroe, into the country there, like about an hour's drive. And then finally I was like, okay, it just doesn't make sense for me not to be in Atlanta. And I definitely wanted to be accessible to the community. And my children were attending Sister Clara Muhammad School and Morphine Muhammad School, which is not far from the office that we have now. And so I initially started kind of like right across the street from the masjid before I had the opportunity to kind of set up right in the same facility as where the masjid is. One of the things that was important to me that I think my mom sort of instilled in me was taking this holistic approach to things, because nurses sit down and they talk to the patient. So if you write a patient, for instance, a medication that needed to be refrigerated, it would be the nurse who would come back to you and say, excuse me, I think you might want to change this because she don't have a refrigerator, you know, and those kinds of things. And I remember that I had a patient once. It was a little Muslim child, and they called me to come and see this child from Grady because they thought it might be some cultural things that needed to be addressed. And this kid was just having repeated seizures. And so when we worked him up, we realized that he had a deficiency in his sweat glands. He couldn't sweat. So if he couldn't sweat, anytime he got overheated, he was going to have a seizure. So I don't care how much medicine we gave this child, we had to keep him from sweating. He needed air conditioner in his house. So I had to go to the masjid and ask them, can you buy this kid an air conditioner? And of course, they did. And so that sort of got me thinking that there needs to be sort of like a social medical connection. And so being right in the community, being responsive to the needs of the community, and being able to listen to our leaders and our leadership just sort of just resonated with what we want to do here at Radiant Health Family Medical Center. So we don't just chase disease. We try and empower people to help their bodies heal, repair, and restore what's broke, and get in charge of their own health, and get in charge of their economics, get in charge of their social situations, so that they can be empowered to live the best life possible and be an example for themselves and for the community. There's two ayahs, and I'm just going to sort of paraphrase them, that sort of like, you know, motivates me to get up every day, just sort of guides me in the things that I do every day at the office, and taking a holistic approach and using various modalities, whether they're allopathic or acupuncture or homeopathic or spiritual or life coaching, to help people. And the first is that Allah said that He created us as various hues. And so, I mean, Islam for me is just the epitome of understanding that there's only one humanity. And it helps me to understand that there's 7 billion people on this earth. And not all of them are going to practice the same way. Not all of them are going to look the same way. But we're all governed by one God. And that God wants us to love everybody. And then the second principle is like even more personal for me. And it's basically, it's a hadith, or it's a saying that the Prophet Muhammad, God's peace and blessings be upon him, is credited as saying, is that if you save the life of one person, it says, if you save the life of all humanity. So I get up every day and look for the opportunity and the miracle to change, to save the life of just one person.
Surely there is no more beautiful structure than Masjid Al-Farooq on 14th Street here in Atlanta. And we thank Dr. Khalid Siddiq for giving us such a wonderful tour of that structure and that community. God says, truly spacious is my earth, so therefore go out and serve goodness and serve the cause of God. And our Dr. Khadija Ascari has certainly done that at the medical center, serving those who have needs. God says, to each is a goal to which He turns him or her, so strive together as if in a race towards all that is good. And certainly we see these young Muslims doing just that. Until next time on Inside Islam Today, I'm Imam Plemon El-Amin. May God's peace be with you and yours. Assalamu alaikum.